David was barely a teenager when he was called and anointed as king and then eventually killed a giant. Mary was only a teenager when she was called to be the mother of Jesus. God is always calling young people. And in the Adventist Church, it was no different. Ellen White was but a teenager when she was called. Most of our pioneers were in their early 20s when they made the decisions that still affect us today. But how do you keep young people excited enough, with enough autonomy and a sense of authority to make decisions when the church is 150, 160 years old? How do you maintain that sense of calling without older people taking control and stopping all the young ones from making the decisions that are necessary? Welcome to A&N In Depth. We're here with Busi, the leader of Adventist youth around the world. Busi, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, Sam. Thank you for having me.
You're a pastor.
I'm a pastor.
And you have been taking care of young people for a long time. You have children that are now young adults.
Yes.
Tell me about Adventist young people around the world. What is it like to be an Adventist youth? How many of them are there? And what impact do they have? Tell me more about that.
Well, our guesstimation is that we have about 8 million young people around the world who are members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And of course, in the youth department, we have different categories of young people. We have the juniors and the senior youth. It depends on their backgrounds. It depends on how they were raised. Some were raised by Adventist parents, and obviously those have a better grasp and appreciation and understanding of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and how it operates. However, we should not assume that all young people and children who were raised by Adventist parents understand what the church is all about. I've discovered that we still need to really educate them and let them appreciate their church. Then you have another category of young people who have joined the church late. They were not raised by Adventist parents, and those still need to understand the dynamics, the different aspects of youth ministries. So we have a whole range of young people that we need to consider. So that's how challenging it is to be a youth leader, to be a youth director for our young people, because you need to consider all these aspects and nuances, because you do not want to lump them together and take for granted that they all understand the culture and everything about Adventism. So
Tell me about the ages, because when we say youth, I found that people have very different ideas about what that means. So what are the ages that encompass the focus of your ministry here at the General Conference in youth?
First of all, we have 5 ministries in Adventist Youth Ministries. We have the Adventurer Club, which is the first club or first ministry. And this takes care of young people or children ages 4 to 9.
So 4 to 9, the Adventurer Club. This is a bit like, it's a club. So it's a group of young people. They have a uniform.
They have a uniform.
They have classes that they do.
They have a curriculum.
When they go through, for example, insects or whatever, they get a little badge.
They get awards, yes.
So that they know that there is a progression.
Those are special skills that they learn, but that is just one aspect of the classes that they have to go through. The classes for adventurers have a plethora of different teachings and stuff like that. It's a holistic program. It teaches the child about themselves, about God, about other people, about reaching out to the community,
about the environment,
all of that
stuff
and all that.
Well.
And then then the awards come in, the skills they learn, where after having learned those skills, they get those patches or those badges, so to award them so that they can show that they have done that. And that takes a year. Each class takes a year. So once they finish the first class, then they move to another class, then another class, until they finish all the classes.
And most children love the external activities, going out into the woods and playing and learning and so on. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've ever thought of it in these terms, but between Adventurers and Pathfinders, that's the greatest gamification project we have in the church.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because it's a game. You do these things and you get this award, which will be a badge, and then you do this and you get another another thing.
Yes, actually, they look forward to that graduation time where they move from one class to the other. So I started with the Adventurer Club, ages 4 to 9.
Right.
Then the next club or ministry is Pathfinder Club, which is the most popular, and it is our best evangelism and retention ministry. It takes care of young people ages 10 to 15. Even in that one, there are 8 modules for each class. Each of the 6 classes, and also that whole curriculum is holistic. The child is taught everything, and then from there they graduate to another ministry or club called the Ambassador Ministry, and that is taking care of young people ages 16 to 21. Now, that age group is the beginning of challenges because they have now moved from that structured program. Now they are more into, understanding themselves, formulating their own worldviews, and that's where we begin to have problems where young people question God, question, whatever they have been taught, and they want to leave the church. Some have left the church, and some are still lingering, but they're not so much certain about what they're doing in church. And then you have the young adults, ages 22 to 30. Now, between 16 to 30, we also have another ministry called PCM, Public Campus Ministries. These are students in public universities. They are also young adults, and some of them are ambassadors. So, yeah, we have those 5 ministries in Adventist Youth Ministries.
Let's go back to Pathfinders.
Sure.
Recently, the president of Brazil has signed
Yes.
a law
Yes.
stating that September 20, I think it is,
Yeah.
it's Pathfinder Day.
Nationally.
So, nationally.
Yes.
So this is a federal law that establishes Pathfinder Day to be celebrated. And there are hundreds of thousands of Pathfinders in Brazil that go to school. They go to wherever they go with the
scarf.
with the scarf. Yeah, which is a yellow scarf that you
Correct.
put, and you can
Yes.
see, that's a Pathfinder.
Correct.
I grew up in Brazil, you see, and I was
Uh-huh.
part of a Pathfinder club in Florianopolis.
Yeah.
Warriors of Faith is the name of the
Yeah.
club, Guerreiros da Fé.
Uh-huh.
And I loved it. I used to have the painted the whole logo of the club in my bedroom.
Wow.
And every weekend I was out camping or doing something outside, and it was part of shaping me. Probably one of the most influential forces in shaping me in my teenage years, early teenage years, was the Pathfinder Club. When I was 10, I joined the club. I wanted to do it when I was 9. There were no adventurers at the time.
Yes.
So as soon as there was the investiture and I started in the club, I got, the camping bag. I had a knife, and I had my own knife.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was a big deal
Not to
for
hurt
me.
anyone.
Not to hurt, but you needed it. You're in the woods. You needed to make
Sure,
fire. You
sure.
need to do the things. So it was, for me, it represented autonomy.
Yeah.
It represented the moment where I would grow up and be trusted
Yeah.
with new things.
Serious responsibilities.
More serious responsibilities, exactly. And then in Brazil, Pathfinders operates differently from other countries I've served in that you have the unit within a club is the most important part of the club. So in America and Europe, the classes take precedent. But in Brazil, the classes do not take precedent. The precedent is in the unit. So it's a unit of 10, 12, sometimes less people. But you have the secretary of the unit, the clerk of the unit. Then you have the captain of the unit.
Yeah.
Who leads that unit.
I know.
I was 11 when they asked me to be a captain, and I was one of the youngest in my unit.
Wow.
And that absolutely shaped my ability to lead.
Introduced into leadership at that young age.
Can you imagine? Where else
Yeah.
are you going to find in society
Yeah.
a structure to give an 11-year-old the opportunity to lead boys, in that case, from 10 to 15 into the woods, into survival situations, into the classes that we had, the skills that we were learning, and all of it. Collecting insects and figuring out dogs, and it was magical for me because it allowed that early experience of taking responsibility for others.
Correct.
How do you think our Pathfinders can be a center of the community? Because we're talking about structure today.
Yeah.
Right? So Pathfinders is our most structured form of of Youth Ministries.
Correct.
Would you agree?
Oh, yes,
It's
I agree.
Pathfinders, right?
Yes.
So our communities, that is the non-Adventist people that live within a neighborhood, those structures no longer exist in most communities.
Sure.
Most communities are not as connected to each other as they used to be. In many parts of the world, kids no longer go to the streets and play with their friends until sunset.
True.
So that integration with the rest of society hasn't happened like they used to.
Yeah.
Probably for the first time in the history of humanity.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe that Pathfinders can play a very important role
Oh, yeah.
within society in general, not just within the church setting. What are your views on that?
Sam, you have hit the nail on the head with a 5-pound hammer. And I'm glad that you are well versed with what's happening around the world, because you mentioned something in the beginning about Brazil declaring Pathfinder Day as the National Pathfinder Day, which is a milestone. And we celebrate that because it shows the impact of the Pathfinder Club. I'm a product of the Pathfinder Club. Back then, it was Missionary Volunteers. I'm sorry, I'm revealing my age now. MV. And we enjoyed it, you know. So the Pathfinder Club still remains the cornerstone of Adventist Youth Ministries. Now, coming to your direct question about what would be the impact of the Pathfinder Club in the community. When I was serving in the division, Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division, my home division, we established what we called CPCs, Community Pathfinder Clubs.
Tell me more about that. I haven't heard about that before.
Yeah, I've written something on it. There is a handbook that I left at the division which helps Pathfinder Clubs to establish Community Pathfinder Clubs. Because I sat one day and I sat in my office and I prayed. I said, Lord, how can the Pathfinder Club be used as an outreach and an evangelism tool? Here we are enjoying this wonderful ministry. Here we are, some of us, products of this wonderful ministry. And we can see how this ministry is continuing to shape young minds. Yes, you are right. You were given an opportunity at a tender age to be a leader. And it still does the same thing today. Young people, the units you are talking about are built into the fabric, the very fabric of the Pathfinder ministry. In the Pathfinder Administrative Manual, we have all those things that they do in Brazil.
Right.
Captains in units. So in smaller groups within the Pathfinder Club, we have that opportunity to give young people, that chance to lead, to feel that they are having an impact and an input in the nature and life of the church. So I prayed about this whole thing. And God impressed me to just share this vision at our advisory when we had our advisory in 2016. And it was embraced by the directors from the unions. And we launched the CPC program. And as I speak to you, we have several community Pathfinder clubs in the Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division. But guess what? I was not aware that other parts of the world have read some of the things that, we shared online on the CPC. I was in Russia the other day. One pastor comes to me and he said, Pastor, I got hold of your handbook on CPC and I have a community Pathfinder club in Russia.
That's amazing.
I said, you are kidding me. I said, that's the power of media.
That's right.
I nearly jumped out of my skin because I was so excited. I said, what? In Russia you have a CPC? Of course, they call it by another name. The name does not matter.
Doesn't matter.
As long as they take the Pathfinder club, adapt it, contextualize it according to the needs of that community. So, Sam, this is our best, and I continue to say it, and I will repeat what I said earlier. This remains our best evangelism strategy and retention strategy. Because when we take the holistic program of the Pathfinder Club, by the way, when we introduce it to the community, we don't tell them that this is a church program. We tell them this is it's a life skills program, which it is.
Absolutely.
When you introduce Christ to people, you are empowering them.
Absolutely.
But we don't come to them and say, we want to introduce Christ to you. We tell them, yay. We meet with the community leaders. We tell them we have a program that can take your kids away from drugs, take your kids away from behaviors that are dangerous and detrimental to their lives. Which community leader in his right mind or her right mind would not accept that kind of a thing? We just come there and say, listen, we have nothing but this. And people have embraced that. In Pretoria, we managed to infiltrate communities which we could not reach before because of the CPC. We had a community of deaf people, deaf young people, joining the Pathfinder Club. They did commands in a different way. There's someone who's leading them in front using signs, and they follow that person. We had a division Pathfinder Kempori, and we invited that club to come just to showcase the power of a community Pathfinder Club. People were mesmerized. People were touched.
I'm sure.
I believe that God can still use today the Pathfinder Club. I was in the Philippines the other day. They have a community Pathfinder Club. I know that in other parts of the world they have it as well. So we are just saying, let's be intentional. If, just imagine, Sam, if each church in the Seventh-day Adventist Church could have each Pathfinder Club in each church of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they could have a community Pathfinder Club. Just imagine.
The impact in the world, we're not ready for that.
We are not ready. It will blow our minds.
Yes.
And some of us think that, when we take our kids through the progressive classes, we're just entertaining them. They're just keeping them, is babysitting. It's a nursery school. Leave them there. The youth department will take. Listen, we are training these young minds, as Ellen White says. Train up a child. And the Bible says, Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. And when he's old, he will not depart from. And Ellen White says, with such an army of workers, rightly trained. Messages to Young People, page 25. Can you imagine the impact? So we are saying from that elementary stage already, let's involve them in service. And we are saying take them with when they go to the community. Let them not just march on Pathfinder Day or special days. No, when there's a CPC, which runs the whole year, by the way.
Right.
It will cover the same span of time as the normal progressive classes.
Yes. Let me ask you a difficult question.
Mm-hmm.
Over the last, let's say, 20 years,
Sure.
I am not sure in Africa. I don't think that's the case. And when I say Africa, all three of our divisions across the continent. But definitely in Europe and North America and some other parts of the world, there seems to have been a, let's say, slowing down of outside activities within the Pathfinder Club. It's mainly just, let's be in a classroom. It's another form of school or another form of Sabbath school.
Yeah.
Where there is, most of the activities are safer. They're inside. They are not, and they just keep, and they do too many of them to have any depth or meaningful impact in the child. How do we go back to the woods?
Yeah. Well, Sam, let me speak for my territory where I come from. That is Africa. Speaking for SID, ECD,
Yes.
WAD, I do know that outdoor work, the outdoor aspect of the Pathfinder ministry is still there. We still do camping. Of course, the pandemic challenged the whole world.
Sure, but
during that period,
hopefully it's over and we are going back to normal.
Yeah. So kids were locked up in their homes during the pandemic. Guess what? There was some innovation and creativity, and people started copying from each other when they would have camporees online, and people would camp in their own backyards, in their tents. Can you imagine? And all that. It showed you how they were really, really missing. They had nostalgia.
Yes.
They missed that outdoor life. And so I'm saying there is still that. We still do have the outdoor. In fact, it's very much part of our program and curriculum. It will be incomplete. Remember what I said? I said it twice. It's a holistic program.
Right.
Otherwise, it would not be the Pathfinder Club. It would not be a ministry that God wants us to inculcate in the minds of the young people. It should be holistic. It should be balanced. And the outdoor aspect of it is important. Nature, the honors that we do, the awards we do, have that aspect of kids, having to be introduced to nature, to things that they can touch. Young as they are, they just excited about doing things, creativity, adventure, climbing mountains, hiking.
It's very different trying to find a butterfly and observe it in real nature rather than YouTube.
True.
So it's my fear,
Yeah.
Busi, and to what it's worth,
Yeah.
my fear is that we would sacrifice the outdoors because of the convenience of media
Yeah. Yeah.
that can be done indoors. And I think that to the
That
degree
balance.
that you
Mhm.
can
Yeah.
influence youth ministries, to continue encouraging them
Yeah.
to have the outdoors in mind, especially for boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Girls are also like the outside, but boys need it.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a necessity.
I know. Otherwise, you'll have a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let me just say something. We can also go to extremes. Some parts of the world concentrate only or mainly on the outdoors than on the other aspect as well. Remember what I said?
Holistic.
Holistic. Balance.
Yeah.
I
Nice.
know that the Pathfinder Club presents a menu, a buffet, where people decide what they want and what they don't want. But that's not what we encourage. We encourage that take the Pathfinder curriculum as it is. Of course, each division will adapt it for their own places, and we encourage that. But as they adapt it, as they contextualize it, let them remember the holistic aspect. We need that balance.
So go to the buffet, but by the time you get your plate, make sure that you have the salad and
your broccoli,
all
your
of the
spinach,
plate
the greens,
holistically.
the
there.
carbohydrates.
I like it.
Yeah.
Busi, let me take on one more topic for this podcast, which has to do with the structure.
Yeah.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church resisted structuring ourselves for many years when we started, from
I
the
know.
1840s to the
Sure.
late 50s, perhaps 60s. We only structured the church because it would help us to fulfill the mission.
Correct.
And then we started sending missionaries, and a few decades later, we restructured the church for mission. So the structure is really important.
Yeah.
The representative nature of
Yeah.
Adventism.
Yeah.
So if you have a local conference,
Mhm.
and for those that don't understand what a conference is, a group of Adventist churches forms a conference.
Mhm.
And the leadership of that conference is elected every 4 years.
Well, in other places, 3 years.
In some places 3. It depends
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
a mission or
Yeah.
a conference and so
Yeah.
on. Now, the representatives of the local churches
Mhm.
that go to these constituency meetings at the conference level, eventually the union level, and all the way to a GC session, we are always saying we need more young people.
Mhm.
But the truth is, if young people are not part of their church board, and if they're not being brought up as leaders in the local church, there is no hope of having youth representing their
True.
church in any level above that.
Sure.
How can a local church mature young people to the point that they are leaders locally and can represent that church and perhaps that conference or union at a broader meeting that will influence all churches in the world church, like a GC session?
Sam, I like that question because it is the that's where the rubber meets the road. The local church is the cradle where we raise our young people. All these grand programs that we have, all these plans that we have will not materialize unless they're implemented at the local church. So I think the first thing is to remind our members that our pioneers, and you and I did not share notes. In your
No.
opening statements, you spoke about our pioneers. Ellen White was a teenager. And I'm also, in my mind, I said this I need to mention when we have this interview. And you said it already, but I'll repeat it because it is worth repeating. Our pioneers were young people. Ellen White was a teenager. And most of them also were in their early 20s. Uriah Smith and them. So our members need to realize and appreciate that the founders of the Adventist Church were young people. And then, of course, we had young people like Luther Warren and Harry Fenner, 1807. They looked at their situation and they realized that something is missing. They prayed about it, and that is the foundation of the big youth movement we have around the world.
1907, right?
No, is it 1807? 1879, sorry.
1879.
1879,
Okay.
just to be precise.
Yeah, yeah.
1879. It was in the 1800s when these two boys knelt and prayed. And today we reap the dividends of what they did.
Right.
So I'm saying if adults leaders in the local church can just remember. Let's remember. Remember, the Bible always says remember.
Yes.
Remember, because we forget. If only we can consult with our history and check who the founders of this church were, then we will not rest until we involve our young people, young as they are, the Adventurer Club. Make them deacons and deaconesses, not of course the elected ones. Let them shadow those who are older. For instance, back home in Pretoria, in my church, for instance, they decided that every time we have a service, the older deacons and deaconesses will have younger ones going with them. You are already at that stage, you are introducing them to leadership. Small things like that. Some of these things may look menial, but you know what? They give these young people pride, a sense of belonging, that, wow, I'm being recognized. So let's just remember. It's simple. Remember where we come from. If we can apply the same principle as our pioneers, I can tell you now, our churches will have a vibrant youth movement. And like you said, you are right. How can we expect them to be delegates at the GC session when they are non-existent in the local church?
That will never happen.
It will never happen. It is a pipe dream. So I'm saying, you are right. We need to introduce this mindset there in the local church. This thing of some of us hoarding positions and thinking that they're not ready, that's where mentorship comes in. Mentorship says, I lead, you watch me. Then there's the next stage. We lead together. The third stage, I sit and you lead as I watch you.
I love it, Busi. Let's do that again.
Okay, mentorship is I lead, you
Step
watch me.
one.
Step one, I lead, you watch me. Step two, let's lead together. Step three, I sit, you lead.
I love it. It's so simple and so beautiful.
Simple.
Thank you so much. Next week,
you are
we're going to
welcome.
revisit this again.
Okay.
And we're going to take it further in understanding youth ministries.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to this or watching it, depending on where you are, where you go to listen to this podcast. It could be Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube. If you are on YouTube, please write down your comments, your questions that you have. Pastor Busi will read them as well as us. We read every comment. And thank you for subscribing also. If someone should listen to this, maybe an elder in your church, maybe your own pastor, send this podcast to them so that they can get a sense of the importance of involving young people in those local churches. And if you're just interested in the Adventist church, but you're not an Adventist yet, then this definitely is the podcast for you. There are dozens of episodes, and you will find out more and more about how the Adventist church works. We'll see you next week.